During a disagreement, my daughter-in-law shoved me and called me theatrical. I canceled their wedding present, the home, because my son accomplished nothing. The crystal wine glass broke on my dining room's wooden floor after slipping out of my hands. Michael and Vanessa shared the same glance across the table when they meet and quietly concur that their mother is losing it. I responded immediately, grabbing the napkin. "I'll clean it up." "No, mother." My hand was halted by Michael's. "You'll get cut. Give it to Vanessa." As she collected the pieces, Vanessa's eyes did not meet her grin. I stood there and said I could do it. But suddenly, there was that edge to Michael's voice, the one that came more often these days. As they kept talking about their wedding preparations, I sunk back into my chair, not even acknowledging that I was there. My kid appeared to be a stranger due to the shadows thrown on his face by the chandelier Richard had put in place for our 30th anniversary. Vanessa scrolled through her phone and continued, "We're considering holding the reception in the garden." "That sounds very beautiful. Maybe some of the roses from the east bed might be used. Your father took delight in them." "Actually," Vanessa cut in, "we're not looking for traditional flowers. We're trying for a more contemporary look." Michael reached for her hand and chuckled. "Vanessa's taste is amazing. Mom, you ought to check out her Pinterest boards." When had I lost my ability to be seen in my own house? The idea hit like a punch to the body. I wondered whether I had been gradually vanishing for longer than I thought as I stood in my garden, which Richard and I had been cultivating for 45 years later that evening after they had departed. My thoughts were interrupted when the phone rang. "Didn't you let them walk all over you once more?" There was that usual mix of worry and frustration in Judith's voice. I instinctively supported them because they were simply enthusiastic about the wedding, and now you're defending them. Once more, there was quiet between us. "When will you share the house with them?" I clenched my fingers around the phone. "The surprise should come after the ceremony." "Ellie, you're handing them your house and your whole inheritance," Judith groaned. "Do you really think he's my son?" The words seemed empty even as I spoke them, Judith. How else could I use it? I strolled around the rooms that had seen my married life after we hung up. The kitchen where we would dance while preparing Sunday brunch, and the study where Richard would read by the window. It would all be Michael and Vanessa's soon. Startled by my reflection, I stopped at the hallway mirror. At what point had my shoulders started to sag like that? When had I begun to shrink and become less noticeable? I raised my chin and straightened my stance, my hands shaking. With her eyes now clearer, the lady in the mirror also straightened. There would have to be a shift. I just had no idea how drastically my world was going to fall apart. "This is Mom." As Michael drew me into a close hug, his voice broke. I'm at a loss for words. I simply informed him about the house in our Boston suburb, which was a wedding present valued well over $1 million. Morning light poured through the windows his father had put many decades earlier as we sat in the sunroom. I grinned. "You don't have to say anything. Just make me a promise, anything. Until after the wedding, let's keep this private. I would like it to be a unique surprise." His eyes were full with excitement as he nodded excitedly. "Of course, without a doubt. And I hope I'll be here forever, Michael." "Mom," he grasped my hand and said, "Stop. Additionally, this will always be your home. Always." A handmade lasagna was cooling in my hands as I stood on the pavement outside Michael's flat later that week. He hadn't picked up when I called him twice to let him know I would be there. In the driveway was his vehicle. As I waited in the late afternoon heat, I knocked. I tried the unlocked door when no one replied. Voices drifted from the living room as I entered the entryway. Vanessa's voice, that ugly china cabinet, and all those old drapes will be the first things to go. "Anything you want, darling," Michael said. "We should turn that small rear room into a room for your mother, I suppose, until we locate a more suitable location for a person of her age." The lasagna seemed unexpectedly heavy in my hands as I froze. "How long will it take us to keep her there, in your opinion?" Michael inquired in a relaxed manner. "Shortly. Last year, the mother of my cousin relocated to Sunny Pines. They always have vacancies." The plate fell out of my grasp and shattered on the marble foyer. The white tiles were smeared with tomato sauce. "Hi there," Vanessa yelled. "Who is present?" My heart thumping against my ribs, I ran to my car before they could see me. I could hardly get the key into the ignition because my hands were shaking so much. I sat by myself in my kitchen that evening with the phone next to me. I picked it up to call Judith 3 times. I put it down 3 times. I said in a whisper to the empty room they didn't mean it. The abrupt lack of Richard was more noticeable than it had been for years. There has to be a reason. However, I realized I was lying to myself even as I was forming the words. My son's nonchalant agreement, Vanessa's contemptuous tone, and their discussion of me as a problem to be fixed rather than a person to be taken into consideration all revealed the reality. I let my phone ring to voicemail as soon as Michael's name appeared on the screen. He left a note asking if I had picked up Vanessa's dress changes as promised, with no mention of my visit. My reflection, a woman I had tried for years to avoid seeing a woman who had made herself convenient, undemanding, and invisible, was staring back at me from the darkened glass over the sink. I said to her, "No more," as I noticed a change in her eyes that strikingly resembled resolve. "This is something you must see." With a solemn attitude, Judith pushed a folded pamphlet across the cafe table. I knew right away the identical Sunny Pines retirement community that Vanessa had told Michael about. It had a floor design with a tiny unit outlined in red monthly cost calculations and handwritten comments in the margins. "Where did you purchase this?" Even I could hear the distance in my voice. Margaret's office is occupied by her daughter. Last week she witnessed Michael and Vanessa on a tour of the facility. Ellie, they made a deposit. Around me, the buzz in the cafe turned to white noise. I sipped my drink cautiously, trying not to shake my hand. I made the feeble suggestion that maybe they're just considering their alternatives. Judith's eyes narrowed for the future. 2 weeks following the wedding, they set a move-in date for the following month. A last icy feeling landed in my chest. "You've always been correct." She reached for my hand and said, "I don't enjoy it. What are you going to do?" A text from my old English department colleague, Catherine Mills, rang my phone before I could respond. After years of intermittent communication, we had finally gotten back in touch. I gathered my handbag and replied, "I have to check something first." "Are you going to accompany me to Michael's? Years ago, he had given me a key for emergencies. Before today, I had never used it." As anticipated, Michael's unit was deserted. He was at a cake taste across town with Vanessa. While Judith stood guard, I headed straight to his home office. I paused in front of his laptop and muttered, "This feels wrong." Judith said, "What they're doing is wrong. You are entitled to know." Richard's password, which he had been using since college, was his birth date, and I typed it in. Finding what I was searching for, a thread about me between Michael and Vanessa, took only a few minutes. Vanessa had wrote, "We just have to get through the wedding. We can persuade her to buy Sunny Pines after we own the house. In any case, she is becoming forgetful." My blood ran cold at Michael's reaction. Mom has total faith in me. She will follow my instructions. In addition, her assets allow her to purchase the premium package. As I continued to read, I came upon a thorough financial accounting that I had sent to Michael following Richard's passing, since I thought he should be aware of it in case I passed away. Before he sent me off to a facility, he was now utilizing it to determine just how much they could extract. "Oh, Eleanor," Judith read over my shoulder and murmured. With trembling hands, I shut off the laptop. "Come on." The cold that had taken hold of my heart was ridiculed by the springtime light outside. We returned in quiet to my house, which I had all but given away to those who viewed me as a resource to be used up and then thrown away. Now we were sitting in my driveway when Judith inquired. I gazed at the home that Richard and I had occupied for 40 years. Pruning the rose plants was necessary. It was time to paint the porch. "Now," I murmured, feeling a peculiar sense of peace. "I have to call someone." I grabbed my phone and phoned a number I had seen online earlier in the day. The office of Daniel Peterson. "How can I assist you?" "Eleanor Thompson is this person. Daniel and I need to talk about my estate and property." "You look different," said Michael, looking at me from the other side of the table. "Have you had your hair changed?" Touching the gentle waves my hairdresser had recommended, I answered, "Just trying something new." Vanessa's eyes sharpened as she scrutinized me. "It's young, Their wedding is in 10 days. As I served Richard's favorite roast dish, which I had made, the air crackled with unsaid tension. I started cautiously refilling their wine cups, wondering about the future. Michael's fork hesitated halfway to his lips as he considered my position in this house once you two are married. How about it, I simply want to confirm that I will always be accepted here. With a crisp click, Vanessa put down her glass. You can't really expect to stay with us forever, Eleanor. Vanessa, Michael began. No, Michael, we must be truthful. Her grin was weak as she turned to face me. We adore you, Eleanor, but new couples need time alone. Naturally, I said in a kind tone. I was simply wondering whether you informed her that I'm giving you the house. Vanessa's voice rose as she swung at Michael. Without looking into her eyes, he whispered, It slipped out. I understand. I sipped my water purposefully. You are both aware of my wedding present, then. We are very appreciative, Mom. Michael spoke quickly. Then, you might be able to explain something. I pulled the Sunny Pines brochure out of my pocket. 2 weeks after the wedding, why do you want to place me into assisted living? Michael's face lost their color. Vanessa's gaze shifted calculatingly between my face and the pamphlet. Where did you purchase that? She made a demand. Is it important? Is it accurate? Michael was the first to recover. It isn't what you think. Mom, your emails were reviewed by me. My heart thundered, but I cut in my voice firm, about how I fully trust you and will follow your instructions. You read all of my private letters. Michael's voice became outraged. I said, you calculated how to take advantage of my money. Vanessa's chair scraped the floor as she jerked to her feet. This is absurd. We were looking at your future care possibilities. The elderly woman's face twisted as I recited a quotation from memory about how long you'd have to put up with her. Everything is being twisted by you. Her palm slapped into the table. We must have these discussions for this reason. You're starting to get paranoid. I'm not forgetful or paranoid. She was playing detective and spying on us when she made the crazy motion. Look at you. Please, Vanessa, Michael said, grabbing her arm. She brushed him aside and moved in my direction. You've always been manipulative and have used the house to exert control on Michael. Enough, I murmured, getting up to greet her. Abruptly, her hand reached out and touched my shoulder. The force knocked me backward. I was trying to get my equilibrium back when my hip slammed into the sideboard's edge. Mom. When Michael did move, it was away from me. He took Vanessa by the elbow. Now let's go. Michael! Keeping my hand on the sideboard, I murmured, Do you not intend to speak? With his back to me, he stopped at the doorway. You ought not to have seen my emails. Then they vanished. Behind them, the front door slammed. With the delicious supper on the table now cold, I slipped gently into my chair. Michael's message chimed on my phone. Vanessa is anxious about the wedding, Mom. She didn't mean such things, I'm sure. Don't make things more complicated just yet, please. No mention of the push. No inquiry as to whether I was harmed. I felt my hip, which was already sore from what would undoubtedly turn into a bruise. The actual anguish, however, was in the void left by my heart. Dust particles swirled in the air as morning light poured through the curtains of my bedroom. Where Vanessa had shoved me, my hip ached. The physical discomfort was tolerable. It wasn't betrayal. A message from Michael rang on my phone. I apologize for Vanessa's actions, but you truly agitated her. I hope you're still thinking about opening the house to us. I went over it twice, looking for any sign of real worry. I put the phone down and went to the window, but there were none. Richard planted a maple tree when we first moved here, and 2 cardinals fluttered among its branches outside. He had referred to it as our legacy tree. How would you respond, Richard, to the empty room? I muttered. The answer was in the stunning clarity of my own ideas, not in his words. I would never have been treated this way by someone Richard would have permitted, not even our son. I took a shower and dressed carefully, selecting a blue shirt that Richard usually remarked went well with my eyes. I then called 3 times. First, I showed Michael's message to Judith, who turned up within an hour, her face clenched in rage. She raged, That's not an apology. Gaslighting is what that is. Now I see that. It was like letting out a breath I had been holding for years after making the revelation. I need your assistance. Sandra Williams, the estate lawyer Judith suggested, received the second call. That afternoon, we made an appointment. Catherine Mills, who now teaches a senior painting course at the community center, received the third call. She told me there was still space in the class. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we get together. By midday, I had put together all of the financial records Richard had arranged before to his passing. Files I'd looked at but never really looked at. I started to realize how much money we had as I put them out on the dining room table. Richard, I traced my finger over his calligraphy and said, "You're a smart guy." Sandra arrived and efficiently and professionally went over the documentation. "You're in a great financial position, Mrs. Thompson," she said. "You inherited a variety of investments from your husband that have greatly increased in value, sufficient to live well without the house." She nodded more than comfortably. "You may still earn a lot of money and buy a fancy condo." I felt a wave of relief followed by something I hadn't experienced in years: potentiality. "How about the house?" "My kid and I made a verbal pledge, but no paperwork has been signed." "Then, it's still all yours, legally." Sandra's eyes were straightforward yet friendly. "Could you tell me what you're thinking about?" I paused barely a moment. Something superior than my original concept. Something significant. Richard had erected a porch swing, and that evening I sat with Judith as the sunset illuminated my yard in amber and gold. She was outraged, and for the first time I didn't jump to Michael's defense. As I watched a hummingbird flitting among the flowers, I clarified that it wasn't about retaliation. It's about realizing my value at last. "It's about damn time," Judith replied, toasting with her wine glass. I felt an odd lightness unfolding inside of me as I clinked my glass against hers. To fresh starts. The scent of potential and turpentine filled the painting studio. Tall windows let in the afternoon light. Vibrant canvases in different phases of development. Catherine gave me a warm welcome and introduced me to the class as one of the smartest people I had ever taught. I looked at the blank canvas in front of me and admitted that I hadn't painted since college. She reassured me that the technique returns like riding a bicycle. She was correct. My initial brushstrokes were tentative, but eventually my muscle memory came back. I had created a basic landscape painting by the conclusion of the session that depicted the scene outside my kitchen window. "This has a genuine emotion," Catherine said. "Haven't you been keeping a lot to yourself?" Michael made his first phone call after the altercation that evening. 5 days of quiet punctuated by light chat as though nothing had occurred. "You've been difficult to get in touch with recently, Mom." I answered, cleaning my brushes in the kitchen sink. "I've been busy." "With what, in addition to dealing with financial consultants regarding my investments, I've resumed painting." "Investing." His tone became piercing. "Which investments? Your father left me plenty of money." "I'm learning how to effectively handle everything." A pause. "That's fantastic. Pay attention." "Regarding the home, that will be discussed after the wedding." I cut in with ease. "How far along are the preparations?" The following week was filled with a lot of activities. I met with Sandra to create new estate agreements after touring 3 opulent residences close to the university district and depositing money on my preference. I also went to a fancy salon, and when I came out, I had a chic haircut that highlighted my cheekbones and framed my face. When I later saw Judith for lunch, she said, "I scarcely recognize you." I became aware of the need of transitional housing for older women experiencing familial alienation through Caroline Turner, a former student who currently manages a foundation for women in need. We spoke about potential uses for a property like mine for hours. "Are you interested in joining our advisory board?" Caroline inquired. "Your viewpoint would be very helpful." I was in my closet 2 days prior to the wedding trying to decide what to wear to the rehearsal dinner. I bought a dark blue dress for my final anniversary with Richard, but I never wore it after he passed away. To my astonishment, it still fit well when I put it on. No longer unseen, the lady in the mirror appeared poised, graceful, and unmistakably present. Michael texted me and my phone buzzed. "Please don't bring up the house problem at tomorrow's rehearsal dinner, which is at 7 o'clock. I typed a brief response while grinning at my mirror, eagerly awaiting its response. What waiting for Michael after the honeymoon was exactly what he didn't know and couldn't have imagined. I no longer felt anxious when I thought about it. Instead, I felt calmly assured that I was finally acting in the best interests of myself and not only other people. As visitors mixed on the country club grass, the string quartet number 4 performed gently. I received admiring looks from those who hadn't seen me since Richard's burial because of my midnight blue clothing. I walked confidently through the crowd, chatting to old friends with ease. Eleanor Thompson, I nearly didn't know who you were. Margaret Williams gave me a big hug. You look stunning. Michael observed me from the other side of the garden, clearly confused. This poised lady who commands attention without seeking, it had taken the place of the mother he knew, unassuming, accommodating, and almost invisible. During cocktail hour, Vanessa appeared at my elbow, her arm entwined with mine, her grin brittle. Eleanor. You look so strange. I adore the way you styled your hair. A new beginning, I said sweetly. Don't you believe that change can be so energizing? Changes, she said, lowering her voice. You've been talking to attorneys about the home, Michael said. I'm just organizing my affairs. Soon after you return from your honeymoon, everything will be resolved. I've organized a special lunch to wrap things up. Her face lit up with relief. That's fantastic news. After our miscommunication, I was concerned. I carefully removed my arm from her grasp and reassured her that it was ancient past. I saw Catherine waving at me, if you don't mind. I could feel Vanessa's eyes staring into my back as I turned to go. In an attempt to reconcile this new Eleanor with the obedient lady she had anticipated controlling, she was recalculating. The evening went without a hitch. Daniel Peterson, whose legal knowledge had been useful, was one of my old pals with whom I danced. I briefly regretted Richard's absence when the father-son dance was announced. Michael later came over to me at the dessert table. You look different tonight, Mom. I went with a strawberry dipped in chocolate. Everyone is discussing it. Regarding you. I kind of agreed that people like to chat. You're having lunch after our honeymoon, Vanessa said. To talk about the house, I looked him in the eye. Indeed, tomorrow is the 3rd week. Everything is set up by myself. A look of relief crossed his face. That's fantastic. After that, I was concerned. The night Vanessa shoved me, you know the moment you departed without seeing if I was injured. He winced. That's unfair, Mom. She was angry. I was too. I lightly stroked his arm. But before your wedding, let's not linger on unpleasantness. Regards, Mom. After hesitating, he clumsily continued, You look really good tonight. My fingers followed familiar surfaces as I made my way through every area of the house once I got home. To complete the paperwork for gifting the property to Caroline's foundation, Sandra and I would meet tomorrow. The first paperwork would be completed before Michael and Vanessa returned from their honeymoon, but the process would take months to finish. I opened Richard's favorite poetry book in his study and discovered the line he frequently recited aloud. When you finally arrive at your own door, you will meet yourself with joy. Richard, you were correct. To the empty room I muttered. The moment has arrived. The wedding proceeded as if it had been meticulously planned. Michael looked dapper in his tuxedo, while Vanessa looked stunning in her couture gown. As the happy mother, I performed my job flawlessly, looking stunning in a silver outfit that garnered praise all day long. At the reception, Judith whispered, You've stolen the show. You have the attention of half the room. I grinned, seeing the first dance between Michael and Vanessa. Let them savor their moment. Mine will arrive soon. When Caroline sat down at our table, those who knew her as the director of the Women's Dignity Foundation were taken aback. We talked excitedly, loud enough for people in the vicinity to hear about her new grant acquisition. Eleanor, your generosity still amazes me, she remarked. Numerous lives will be altered by it. Leaning closer, Richard's cousin Beth questioned, What generosity? Just a little donation, I said, drawing Vanessa's attention from across the table. She was next to our table, champagne in hand within minutes. Could I have you for a minute, Eleanor? Private family matter, she said, her grin set. She led me to a peaceful area of the ballroom. With no more pretense of kindness, she screamed, What are you planning? What you imply is unclear to me. Don't pretend to be innocent. With that woman, what kind of donation were you talking about, Caroline? Now we are on the same board. I have contributed a little amount to her foundation. What sort of input? She gripped her champagne flute tightly. I told her it had nothing to do with today's celebration. Next week, when we have lunch, everything will be obvious. She looked at my face, looking for hints, but couldn't find any. She changed her strategy. I genuinely want us to remain close, Eleanor, even though I know we've had our disagreements. Michael adores you. How kind, particularly after you talked about sending me to Sunny Pines. Her cheeks flushed with color. There was a miscommunication. Was there a miscommunication when you shoved me and Michael walked away without making sure I wasn't hurt? She shouted, "You're twisting everything. That's precisely why." What is the reason? Why am I no longer the obedient, handy woman you thought I would be? With her voice down to a whisper, Vanessa took a step closer. Think again about anything you're planning. Your only relative is Michael. You are alone without us. Here's where you're mistaken. I pointed to my companions. Some people respect me for who I am rather than what I own. Her facade broke totally. We are guaranteed the house. You can't. I reminded her that I hadn't signed anything. It's still all mine legally. Michael was walking in our direction. His face was marked with concern. Is everything all right? He looked between us and asked. Excellent. Vanessa bounced back right away. Your mother was only imparting some marriage-related knowledge. Later, Michael caught me close to the coat check as I was about to depart. What's happening on Mom Vanessa brought up the subject of the house. How about a gift I gave him, a little pat on the cheek? At our meal, all will become evident. Michael have a great honeymoon. That night, as I drove home, I experienced an odd sense of calm. What I already knew had been verified by the encounter with Vanessa. There would be no simple answer. I may possibly lose my relationship with my only child as a result of the course I had taken. But for the first time in years, I was acting morally according to my own principles instead of caving in to pressure from others. In the Sunday afternoon light, the white tablecloth shone brightly. Richard's grandmother's china crystal glasses and sterling silverware would be on my dining room table. A family history tableau that is about to experience its most dramatic moment. The exact moment the doorbell rang was 1 o'clock. I went to welcome them after smoothing my linen dress. Welcome home, Vanessa and Michael. Taking in the strain behind Michael's grin and the scarcely disguised excitement in Vanessa's eyes as she looked about the home, I gave them both a hug. She thought she would soon own the house. Mom, the property looks fantastic, Michael said as he trailed me into the dining room. Have you redecorated? I said, just refreshed a few things and motioned for them to have a seat. What was Bermuda like? We got through the appetizer by chatting. Michael always loves my homemade crab cakes. Vanessa's gaze kept flitting to my purse on the sideboard the entire time, obviously anticipating that it would hold the house deed. As he finished his crab cake, Michael remarked, "This is delicious, Mom. You said you had something to talk about then, indeed." I sipped my water purposefully. Regarding my future, I've taken several important choices. What about this house? Forgetting her fork. Vanessa leaned forward a little. I have a lot of sentimental attachment to this property, as you know. There are recollections of your father and our shared existence around every turn. Michael, of course, nodded. We will therefore preserve. Let me finish, please. I softly raised my hand. After giving it some thought, I've concluded that the house should continue to have a significant function. I grabbed a folder next to my plate, took out a few documents, and placed them on the table. I signed the first documents 2 weeks ago to give the Women's Dignity Foundation this property. Quiet. Total quiet like thunder. Vanessa was the first to recover. What? The word came out as a choked murmur. The house will be transformed by the foundation into a transitional living facility for women over 60 who are experiencing family separation. The Richard Thompson Memorial Home will be its new name. The color had faded from Michael's face. Isn't this a joke, Mom? No, Michael. The agreement has legal force behind it. I shoved the papers in their direction. About 6 months will pass before the last transfer is finished. Vanessa burst out of her seat. You are a cunning old witch. This house is what you promised us. When I learned that you were going to ship me to Sunny Pines, I changed my mind. Not at all. Michael started shakily. I interrupted him, so don't lie to me. I looked at the pamphlets. Your emails were reviewed by me. Anger twisted Vanessa's face. You're acting spitefully. No, Vanessa, this is what I'm doing because it's morally correct. Those in genuine need should be housed at this place. How about us? Michael's voice broke. This was what we were expecting. I noted it was premature, particularly because nothing was ever decided. We will dispute this, Vanessa spit out. It's obvious that you lack mental capacity. Another document slipped across the table as I did. Last month, I had a thorough psychological assessment. I'm in wonderful mental health. Michael looked at me as though he had never seen me before. Where are you going to reside? I bought a condo close to the campus. Next week, I'll be moving in. How much money? Vanessa insisted. I told Michael, your father left me very well provided for. If you had ever inquired about my well-being instead of my possessions, you may have learned something. Face flushed with rage, Vanessa reached for her handbag. I refuse to sit here and take offense. Hold on, Vanessa. She rushed to the front door and Michael yelled after her. Will you be attending? She made a demand. He paused and glanced between us, obviously conflicted. Go, I whispered. She is now your wife and your top concern. My phone kept ringing that night with calls from Michael, so I put them on voicemail. Desperate appeals replaced furious accusations in his communications. The last one came through around midnight. Please, Mom, our financial situation is dire. We must speak. I put the phone down and looked out at the garden under the moonlight. His treachery still hurt, but it no longer defined who I was. The following 3 months played out like a difficult game of chess. Michael and Vanessa began their effort to overturn my judgment, as was to be expected, with vague threats of legal action. During our weekly meeting, Sandra reassured me that they have no grounds. Those paths have been essentially blocked by the psychological assessments and recorded data. Vanessa turned to more subtle strategies once legal intimidation failed. There were rumors that I was becoming mentally ill. She even went up to Richard's brother and tried to get him to step in. Vanessa was surprised by the network I had established. Friends, former coworkers, and students came together in support of me, refuting her story with their own accounts of how Michael and Vanessa treated me over the years. In the meantime, I kept taking painting lessons from Catherine and became a member of Caroline's Foundation's advisory board, where my academic expertise helped with grant writing. Despite being smaller than my previous residence, my new condominium turned into a sanctuary stocked with items that were important to me. I could see how the seasons changed in the tiny park that was visible from the floor-to-ceiling windows. My doorbell rang on a cool autumn afternoon 6 months after the lunchtime altercation. In the hallway, Michael was by himself. He appeared thinner than I had recalled, with black bags under his eyes. With a lack of confidence in his voice, he inquired, "May I come in?" I moved out of the way and showed him my living room where my most recent paintings were displayed. "You did these?" he inquired, seeming genuinely shocked. "Yes, I did." His hands were clutched between his knees as he sat heavily on the sofa. Vanessa has returned to Chicago. We're splitting up. I took in this information in silence. He went on to say that the financial strain was too great. We had used all of our resources to acquire your home. He drifted off, shaking his head when that failed. Everything fell apart. I truly meant it when I stated I was sorry for your suffering. Are you... His eyes were red-rimmed as he looked up. After our intended treatment of you, he nodded slowly. Your actions deeply hurt me, Michael, but I never wanted to see you suffer. In an attempt to comprehend why I was prepared to betray my own mother, I have begun therapy. Then he laughed bitterly. It appears that I have some significant problems to resolve. We all do, I said softly. The house, he said tentatively. Is it actually turning into a shelter? I verified that it was the Richard Thompson Memorial Home. Next month, the improvements will start. His eyes welled with tears. Dad would have been pleased. He would have, really. The burden of all that had transpired hung between us as we sat in quiet for a few minutes. Finally, he continued. I don't expect forgiveness, but, Mom, I apologize. I'm very sorry. I think you're real. I looked at his face. My son. A stranger, though. It may take time to forgive. It will take longer to trust. He accepted this by nodding. Is there any chance we might get coffee together? Begin modestly, I felt something loosen up inside of me. Not total forgiveness, but maybe the first step toward it. That would be nice. Caroline organized a fundraiser art show that weekend that included pieces by women over 60. I had 2 paintings on show, one of which was a landscape of the garden I would soon be leaving. Both sold before the evening was out, which surprised me. I started going to the house frequently to supervise the remodeling plans as fall turned into winter. Every time I walked away with greater confidence in my choice. The rooms that had seen me go would soon serve as a haven for women taking back control of their own lives. Every few weeks, Michael and I got together for coffee. It was difficult at first, but eventually became more comfortable. In contrast to his prior role, he had accepted a position with a nonprofit housing group. He acknowledged that it paid less. I do, however, sleep better. I was discovering that transformation may take many different forms, sometimes involving calm, everyday decisions, and other times involving dramatic confrontation. I stood on the front porch of the house where I used to live, watching Caroline cut the ceremonial ribbon that was stretched across the entryway a year after I had first shared my intentions for the property at that fateful lunch. The crowd community, members, foundation supporters, and the first residents who would move in the next week all erupted in applause. Caroline's voice carried across the courtyard, where chairs had been set up for the dedication ceremony, and she said, "I declare the Richard Thompson Memorial Home officially open." As the moment was photographed, Judith gripped my hand. While maintaining the charm of the house, the inside has been changed by the restorations. The community kitchen had replaced the formal dining room. The master bedroom was now used as a therapy area. With materials on legal rights and financial literacy now lining its shelves, the library stayed mostly unaltered. The sunroom, which is now an art studio where I would give weekly painting lessons to residents, held the most significance for me. In the most surprising way, my life had completely circled back. I saw a familiar face hovering back at the fringe of the crowd as people explored the facility. Michael carried a little wrapped box, his expression apprehensive yet resolute. When I came up to him, he remarked, "I wasn't sure if I should come. I was a little surprised to learn that you did, and I'm delighted you did." Over the preceding year, our relationship had gradually improved, not to its previous state, but to one that may be healthier. His treatment had uncovered childhood habits, and my own counseling experience had made it clearer to me how I contributed to his entitlement complex. He offered the item and stated, "I brought something for the house." It included a framed picture of Richard tending to his favorite flowers in his yard, grinning. Michael clarified the entrance so that everyone who enters may understand which spirit is in charge of this location. My eyes stung with tears. It's flawless. Later, while the festivities went on, I was standing in my bedroom, which is now a comfortable sitting space for the inhabitants. I could see through the window the garden now maintained by a local horticultural therapy program where Richard's roses were still in bloom. "What a change," someone remarked behind me. Judith was standing there with 2 champagne flutes as I turned around. Me or the house I accepted a drink and inquired. "Both. I always knew you had this in you." Yet she clinked her glass to mine. "Did you? Since I most definitely didn't. When you spend decades shrinking yourself for the comfort of others, that's what occurs." Michael came up and reluctantly joined our talk, saying, "You forget how big you really are." His method of making apologies not only to me but to all women who had been undervalued was to volunteer at the center once a week to assist residents with financial literacy. Carolyn called everyone together for a last toast as nightfall drew near and visitors started to leave. She raised her glass in honor of Eleanor Thompson, who taught us all that it's never too late to take back your voice, your purpose, and your power. People turned to face me, including Michael, who was standing politely at the rear of the room, as well as old and new acquaintances and ladies who would soon call this place home. I said, lifting my own glass, and to Richard, who always saw me clearly, even when I couldn't see myself. In the silence of my condominium later that evening, I stood in front of my most recent painting, a self-portrait that was unlike any I had ever created. In it, my demeanor was one of calm expectation as I stared off into the distance rather than at the observer. At Sub 7, I had finally realized that the biggest changes in life frequently occur when we least anticipate them. Not when we are young, but rather when we have the courage to face ourselves honestly and stand by our convictions. My rebirth had been sparked by the treachery that had almost destroyed me. I appreciate you listening. Remember to subscribe and feel free to leave a comment with your tale. Your voice counts.